definitely does think he's wrong. So Dan Howell is one of those authors who does not need an introduction as a good stuff. For previously known as Dan is not on fire, or Dan is a talent that has not gone unseen in the online comedy, queer, and literary scene. His content is connected with so many of us in this room, and so we're here tonight to celebrate his solo debut. You will get through this night. You will get through this This is Dan's immaculately thought out mental health toolkit with suggestions, tried and tested methods, and with that Dan Howell of flair, of humour, and understanding. So we all know this is a book to not be missed. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Dan Howell.
Do I need to talk loud? Hello?
God said, Dan Howell, shut up.
Is it? What? I think it's fine.
It's the mic.
You can come on.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you having us back with me right now.
It's fine.
It's not fine.
It's just a bit annoying.
Excellent.
You will get through the first minute of this book event. It's okay. Thank you for having me.
So I'm gonna.
Oh my god, am I being given a wine? Hello, okay. I'm a white girl evening, love it. This is after I was in a church the other day and then they gave me a warm Sprite. So thank you for having the opposite energy of a church.
This is ultimately the better decision.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
So we're going to talk for 40 minutes. It's going to be a little interview. Pressure. And then we'll do 20 minutes of Q&A, which thank you so much for submitting all of the questions onto our little side.
Should I say?
Yeah. We weren't even, you should say.
Well, we looked at a couple of them. No one said yes, so.
So, I'm not really sure about work, guys. So to say the obvious, you started your own YouTube. Did you ever imagine publishing a solo book?
Well, no, because I never thought that anything good would come. Well, I don't know, is this I don't thought that anything would come of it, basically, because, I'm so old that my era of YouTube was just nerds doing something for no reason. Back in the pure early internet times. And then when it was, who's got the amazing book is not on fire? That was a disturbing moment for literature globally, and they're like, we're going to let them into this world, you know what I mean? And so for it to get to the point where people are going, unironically, can you help people with mental health? How did we get here? Something really weird happened from 2009 until now, and yeah, I'm just glad that my face plant grinding across the floor experience in life has accidentally done something for someone else. So yeah.
If you were to look back at the start of your solo career and know that you were going to publish a book, what book do you reckon you would have published?
Oh, if you asked me back then, I'd be like Dan's tits for staying in the closet. It would not be a bestseller. It would be awful.
And when you started, did you have what was your wildest dream of your career?
My wildest dream was maybe another 100 subscribers. That would be cute.
And you hate that.
Yeah.
So, what originally brought you to this book? You talked about the start of your career, but where did this begin?
So obviously in 2017, I uploaded a YouTube video called Daniel Depression, which we look back at now, and I think all of us, when you talk about mental health, we're like, oh, we talk about mental health or anxiety, XD, whatever. But I don't think we can take for granted how bad it was even 4 years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, pandemic doesn't count yet, makes sense. Because it was terrifying at the time. Even though I've got this self-deprecating brand and I had this audience that was so supportive, I at the time was like, if I announce any kind of weakness, will people think that I'm less funny? or they would think that I'm not relatable anymore, or they think that my favourite straight YouTuber, Daniel Howell, is like a guy that is weird, doing this weird thing that I don't understand. And so it was something that I felt I had to do, because in a way that, you know, I would have a very similar experience a couple of years later regarding my sexuality, I just felt like I had to confront it myself. And the advantage of what I was doing on YouTube was it made me feel like if I put myself out there, I can't do that while lying about this huge, you know, part of myself that was inside. So I dread to think how long, honestly, I would have spent not knowing that you aren't supposed to be dealing with too much anxiety or suffering with depression, and that that isn't just who you are, and it's what your life can be. So I'm quite glad that this held in my hands.
And have you ever been previously interested in psychology? Or was
Yeah,
it
so I'm one of those psychology A-level people. It was the worst, it was disgusting. It was miserable. The amount you have to remember, it's like, I don't want to know you in et al. Fuck off. Because there were some that were okay, because all of school, like it's bullshit, obviously, you know, a lot of people, you can be academic, you can't, some people, you know, you're naturally inclined to it, they say it's a critical thinking thing, it's just a memory test, and it's awful, and some were super easy. Psychology was by far the most miserable memory test out of anything you have to do. The amount of stuff I have to remember, I'm a protest, I just don't think I should do this, and then God said, haha nerd, I'll make you confront this again in 10 years when the world needs it most. But yeah, I think I've always been interested in what makes people tick, and also just kind of looking in the mirror and trying to be like, what the hell is this about? Why? Help? So, yeah.
And I'm right in thinking you work with a psychologist, right? How was that?
Yeah, so because the story of this book is after the storming literary success of the amazing book, people kept coming up to me and Phil, just being like, doing it, and I was like, oh, when the time is right. And then HarperCollins, the HQ team, came to me and said, we really think you should do a book about mental health. And I was like, you've got to be joking. I'm the least qualified person in the world. And they said, medically you are, but also people, they like hearing about your pain and laughing at it. So we think that's a good enough in to justify printing a load of paper. So I think that's when you have this chat. And my number one concern was, I think there's a lot of people that write really valid books about their own experiences in life, but then when they start giving advice, it gets a bit strange because you don't know if you can trust what they're saying. And I'm not saying that people would go, why the fuck are we listening to what Dan Howell's got to say about something? But I really thought it was important that we had a seal of approval saying, just so you know, I'm going to write this, someone has fact checked it, I'm not just making up stuff that I think sounds like a nice idea. And that made it much harder, because a lot of the time, I would even be telling stories about my own life, and then a psychologist or a Google Doc would be like, this is problematic. Well, I'm joking. And it's like, yeah, but that's just a really unhealthy way to. Yeah, I know it's unhealthy, but it's my unhealthy way to. Just don't say it like that. So it was a good learning journey to the point where, you know, what has been in here is stuff that you can count on, which I think is as helpful for me when I read back and I go, I can trust what I said on page 202. So yeah.
A lot of authors don't read their books once they've published them.
No, I mean, I struggle to rewatch my own YouTube videos. People love to trigger me with that kind of content, but it's, I do actually reread this book quite a lot because I don't remember what I wrote sometimes, and I think that people in my life have weaponized it against me because it means I can no longer moan to my friends, because they'll be like, well, that just sounds like you're trying to predict the future. I'm just worried about this event. Well, that's not a catastrophic way of thinking. What are you talking about? They're like, you wrote that in your book, Dan! I read that in your book! And they're like, shut up, Susan. So I do frequently come back to it to kind of, you know, remember what I said, to remind myself of sometimes even just how I overcame a period of my life. And I'll be like, that's how I did it. I can do it one more time.
Sure. And so, even though you may have like experienced therapy or its impact to a certain capacity, did working that closely with teach you anything? Like anything that stood out to you that you wouldn't have thought about before?
I think it was definitely the general reassurance that mental health and our emotions aren't this scary, unknowable, mystical thing that we just have to deal with. Because some people go like, I'm just sad, that's my brand. And it's like, okay, well you can choose for that to be like your Tumblr HTML theme, but it doesn't have to be your lived experience permanently, because ultimately we're just complicated monkeys. We're just screaming, thinking about lightning and saber-toothed tigers, and then now people are like, you've got bills and student loans, and we're not meant to comprehend this level of horror. And that's what anxiety is. And so that means that science can also help us by saying, we actually know why you feel like that. It's your brain trying to make sense of situations like this, and there are X, Y, Z things you can do to change how you feel. And for me, that was really reassuring, because when I was first dealing with depression, I was thinking, is this just, I'm broken? Is it just what my brain was meant to do? Am I going to have to take a medication that will do something, and that's a part of my life for the rest of my life? And then you have people like Dr. Heather, who consulted on this book, that go, there are so many ways that you can approach this, and all of them are valid, and it's about ultimately what works for you. So I think it's reassuring to know that it's actually not just, yeah, you can get through it. It's no, there are things that you can do that will work.
Do you think that any part of this book helped you to like rediscover who you are as a person, or was this very much an expression of, sorry, I'm not going off script.
No dangerous things. It still happens.
Is it very much a reflection of your time rather than, a re-exploration?
I think a lot of this kind of forced me to confront times in my past, particularly when we were talking long term, like the third part of the book, which is about, okay, I know what I can do when I'm having a tough time, I know the things I can do tomorrow, but long term in my life, what do I need to start thinking about my past and my future? And that got me thinking, what parts of my childhood do I need to try and understand and reframe? Because so many of us, I'm sure a lot of you in this room relate, especially when you're younger, I just want to run away from right now as fast as possible. And I think so many of us go, I'm going to change where I live, I'm going to find new friends, I'm going to, so many changes about myself. And it's so important to go on a quest for authenticity, to create a life you want, to be who you want. And at some point, it's not saying you have to confront your past, but I think that it is, when you feel comfortable, quite important to look back at who you are now, why you feel the way you do, and just try to understand and kind of forgive your younger self that was not responsible for anything that happens when you were that younger, and then go, I understand how you got here today, and I'm okay with that. So it can be one of the hardest things. People think that, dealing with a panic attack is bad, and it is in the moment, but sometimes going, all right, long-term future, how am I going to reframe my thoughts so I talk to myself more kindly? Whoa, that's hard.
Sure, for those of the people who have a role for it, can you talk a little bit about the sectioning?
Yeah.
The way that you set up?
So I wanted to be super practical, because when I was talking to HarperCollins, they were saying you need to understand people that are not terminally online and know every single thing you've ever done in your life for the last 14 years will read this, and it will need to appeal to them. And I was like, okay, that's
It
hard.
doesn't apply to anyone.
Oh, no. When we get into your questions, we'll see how the opposite of that is in this room right now. But it was the idea that, I joked the other day that someone going through a really tough day that gets lost in an airport at H. Smith might pick up this book, and this needs to resonate for them. And it was me thinking, what would I have liked to have read? And I think it's in the order of priority. So the book is in 3 sections, which is, the things that you can do immediately. If you're having a really bad day, if you can't stop worrying about something, if you're so stressed you feel like you're going to snap, what are the breathing techniques, the exercises of mindfulness that you can do to make yourself feel better, so you can go, right, I can literally get through this night in terms of the next 5.5 hours. And the next one's all the lifestyle changes. This is my least favourite part of the book, because it tells you to go outside and stuff like that. And I hate it. I'm like, what do you mean the science says we need to see the sun? Well, I don't know. Like, grass is good for you. You're not meant to. Because the online world, it's this strange duality where, for me, as a young person, the online world was my safe space and my escape. Because my hometown, my school, the friends I had in my life, I felt like I didn't have what I need. But so many of us, we find that on the internet. Well, I like these weird nerds in this smelly Discord where I don't know who people are. I found this strange corner of Tumblr that my grandma would never understand. But it's getting me through those couple of years. And it's so good to live in a space where you feel like it's comfortable, but the internet is all conversations that you imagine. You're reading a screen, and so it's a world that is inside your head. And unfortunately, this place that can sometimes be our safe space is not biologically what we crave, because we're not meant to think that much. That's why we have all this anxiety. We spend all of our time in our head, just reading and imagining, social media. You log on to Twitter, say next, and all of this yelling, and it's hard to just imagine tens of thousands of people screaming at each other all the time, and the human brain is just not supposed to process that. And so it's like, yeah, touch some grass, feel the sun on your face, and that for me is incredibly uncomfortable. And yet I was forced to contend that sometimes when you do go outside, it does clear your head, even if that is like opening the window going, well, look at the pigeon shitting on the floor. Okay, I'm outside.
And I'll take a drastic turn from the psychology questions. Did you have a most exciting moment when publishing this book? Such an achievement.
I think that it was really exciting. We've got the #1 printed on the front of the book there, which was great. It's always really unexpected as well, because we did a lot of the I like to encourage people to support indie bookstores and things that aren't going corporate conglomerates as much as possible. Thank you. We worked, I have a merch store with a small Stoke Newington-based indie bookstore, and we're like, okay, we're used to selling like a few books, and all of a sudden people are like, we bought 2,000 pre-orders in one day, and we're like, what the fuck do we do? We don't have the space at the back office, but it's really cute to hear stories like that. And I think that for me, the strangest thing about it has just been people that are not online, that have no idea who I am. I'll get forwarded letters from the book publisher, because I'll be like, Brenda, who's 62 living in Carlisle, has no idea how the fuck to reach you on Instagram, but they wrote us a letter, and we forwarded it to you now, and they said that they gave it to their son, and he really needed it, and he enjoyed it. And I'm like, that is so wholesome, and such a unbelievably unique experience for me, compared to people just saying piss and cat. I understand that comes from the heart, but it is.
Sure. And you never stop being a comedian, obviously. But what was it like, to shift so drastically from writing comedy to writing something so serious?
I think a lot of people sometimes worry it's how do you get that middle ground between having an appropriate sense of humour and being serious when the conversation calls for it. And I think it's less important to worry about that than it is to not do it at all. Because the problem with mental health is people feel nervous and afraid and ashamed to admit that they're struggling with anxiety. Because you don't want to be the weird person telling your friends, I can't cope right now. It just feels strange. Sometimes we don't want to go to our family and say, I really don't want to have this conversation, I don't know how, but we need to talk about how stressed I'm feeling. And it can be very difficult, but I think that humour for a lot of people is the way to just flop it on the table. If you make a joke and it's just so wrong and it's so offensive, and everyone's just like got their mouth open and they're like, that's horrendous. But then at least you put the topic on the table, and after apologising, then you can be like, well, now you know how to work on it. So I would say don't let anything hold you back from doing it. For me, the middle ground was going, right, I know how I want to say this, but Brenda in Carlisle does not want to read that film. So we need to find a happy middle ground. So I think we got a nice balance there, which was basically me going, I'm going to admit to every embarrassing, horrendous thing that I've done in my life, every example of how I am the worst mental health person in the entire world, and then after laughing at me, someone somewhere will go, well, he's like that, I'm not nearly that bad. I will get through this, mate.
Sure. So planning your theatre tour must have come quite swiftly after the original publication of You Will Get Through This Night.
Yeah.
Actually, going to say now, I'm talking about a shift out of mental health and
back into it.
You obviously went from one journey, then explored so much, and then left it again. Do you think you have like a new perspective on?
I think, yeah. I mean, I love going outside and doing events like this. Not that the piss comments aren't great, but sometimes to see your faces, I'm like, oh, people are real. It's not all just numbers and comments on the internet. So for me, going on tour is actually a great mental health thing. Lots of people can't have it. if you look at a bus and you can't shower on the bus, and then you're doing the same thing every day, a lot of people just have a spectacular, beautiful mental breakdown when they try to go on tour, especially a lot of internet people. They go, oh, Dan, Phil, you go on these tours, they just like it. Why do other people do it? Because they do it, and they're like, I'm an inside cat. I'm an inside cat. Whereas for me, there's something about being on tour that forces me to just be very present all the time. And this was a book that started being written as the thing happened a couple of years ago that we tried to pretend not to talk about. And it was funny because when we were writing the book, I was talking to the book editor and she was like, are we going to acknowledge COVID? And I was like, no, it's going to be over in a week. That was really good. And then now, 2 years later, they're saying additional material. And yes, I think we do need to acknowledge the apocalypse that happened that may or may not have affected how we feel or changed our lifestyle. So, well, I hate talking about it because we are also desperate to move on from it. Because we spent so long going through it, it was weird, and now we can go outside, even if we are inside cats, we might be like, I want to go to the gig. Oh, thank God, life is back. And yeah, I think it's important that we look over our shoulder and acknowledge that. So for me, this is a product of the time where I was sat inside my T-Rex position, just typing, writing it. And then to go out on the road for 9 months and be out with people. And, I talk about mental health in the show. So I think that both of them, it was quite it was a time in my life where I felt like this was holding me accountable to the things that I was writing. So it came at a good time.
And so, sorry, now I'm going to talk about the pandemic.
Yeah.
You just said you don't want to talk about it. It's obviously was a little pandemic baby.
Yeah.
And more.
Right moment.
I said you can say anything in the structure.
That's everyone's in a section somewhere there. Where's the horny dragon shell? I know it's in right now. Yeah. Section. They have me signing books in the crime room.
Next door to the horny dragon section. What was it like to write a book about mental health in this period that was so pivotal for so many people and mental health?
It felt super ironic for quite a long time there. But I think that it really forced me to not procrastinate because I had nothing else to do. I had nowhere else to be. So the book editor was like, when's that chapter going to be done on mindfulness? I don't have to bake bread. I have no other option right now. So that worked out. But I think it felt quite symbolic that it started to release as people were starting to kind of pick themselves back up again. So it felt like an injection of hope when people really needed it. So that was good timing, I guess.
Sure. And so when I was researching this book, we talked about it very briefly. A lot of people pinpoint their experience of being queer in relation to this book. And so my question, sorry it's long, so I'm going to have to read it. Is that being queer doesn't equal the product of your work always being about queerness? But what do you think your experience of being openly queer online changed your perspective of mental health and therefore the way you wrote this book?
I think it's always going to be intertwined because any aspect of your identity, like race, gender, sexuality, is going to inform what your experience is. And for me, obviously, what the homophobic environment that I grew up in is probably a big contribution towards a lot of the long-term issues that I have with self-esteem, the way that I'm bad at policing my own thoughts, and so for my writing about mental health, the perspective comes entirely from my identity as having a queer life. And the interesting thing is that everything I do is inherently queer, even if it isn't explicitly the gay sad book. I think that sometimes you do get pigeonholed, which is interesting because I do a lot of press. People force me to take TikToks right now. I'm almost done, it's okay. But then you get interview requests sometimes, and then it'll be like, gay, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, that's, it's important sometimes. I've had requests, someone wants me to come on the radio to do a pride playlist, this, that, and the other. That's great, it seems like a celebration. Other times, it feels like people want you to lean into it like a sleigh. Look at the thing over there, kind of way. So it's about managing that, and I think for me it's important to kind of, I'm not asking to be forced to be an ambassador, and yet I feel like I need to make sure that things are being portrayed in the right way, because especially, as I'm sure you'll know in the mainstream media, we live in like dystopian turf island right now in the UK, so it's making sure that if you're speaking to some old TV company or a newspaper, that if they're going to bring it up, I need to make sure that they're talking about it in the right way. So it feels like, you know, if it's a part of you, you're going to have to fight for it.
And you wrote this after you came out. Do you think, I just think it's an interesting one, do you think that the way that you wrote this book would have been different if you had...
I don't think I'd have written the book if I was in the closet, because I think it's only because I went on this, you can see the pipeline, like the pipeline like Dan and Phil to lesbian trans man. It's the same thing. Like the pipeline of like YouTube, the press gay book. It makes sense in that I came onto YouTube very innocently, wanting to make stupid videos about awkward, socially relatable things that I did, just sharing embarrassing stories from my life. And every single time I did that, it cracked the door open a little wider to be like, the more embarrassing it is, the funnier it is, the honester it is. Honester? Hello. Don't tell me. The more people will appreciate what you're saying, because I think authenticity is what people are drawn to, and that was ultimately the lesson there. And it's only because I have this audience that say, oh, we like you, thanks for talking about this, and we'll be like, Dan, you talked about selling an axe to a child, and I got fired for being an idiot, and I just want to say thank you, and that made me go, can I do the same thing but with depression? And it sounds good, and yet it's entirely what happened, and it's only because of that that I felt like, do I have the nerve to finally confront my sexuality? And now I think it really just says that ultimately, it's healing for yourself to be authentic, but I think the people around you will also benefit from it. And it's understandable that so many of us need to take the time that we need in our individual circumstances, because of the environment that we live in, the circumstances, to go on your growth journey to create the authentic life that you want for yourself, whether it's your dream job, or friends, or where you live, or how you identify. But as long as in the back of your mind you're going, I'm still going to head towards that direction, I think it'll be fine.
I've lost my question. It's because I'm darting around. Yeah, it does. So, oh my god. Yes, if you could give your 18-year-old fresh to YouTube self any advice now, what would it be?
Cut the hair when it gets like or if you're going to get to that length, like do something nice with it, you know what I mean? Like you could wavy it long, but don't like straighten it long. You look like a robot guy. Yeah, no, it's hard to say. I think we all spend a lot of time, discussing this in the book, ruminating on the past, and regret everything that I would have done in the fantasy parallel universe where I made that other decision. And I think that we can spend a lot of time wistfully thinking about lives that we could have had, but ultimately you need to just accept that here we are, and all you can do is, like, right now, decide what to do, what the best thing is for you, and that can be hard, and it feels impossible, but life is very long, and so we can all, take the time we need to go the right direction. And so when I look at my 18-year-old self, I go, oh God, so many mistakes! Where do we begin? And yet, I face planted my way here today, and so I look back at it and I'm like, you know what, you got there, it's fine.
And aside from letters being sent to your publisher, from something you gave to the person, or seeing your book in the airport, is there? Hi. It's just going to take a minute.
I might find that. I was yapping about the undeniability of mortality and life. Bong! I was having a decision about living your authentic self for long. Bong! And sweetie, that's acceptable. Bong! I get it.
So aside from you getting letters and seeing your book in the airport, was there any moment after the publication of your book through this night when you were like, oh fuck, I've published a book?
Yeah, I mean, it was scary. It was one of those times that the first time I left the house, it was just my lockdown, and I saw it organically in shelves, and then you see yourself next to other authors, and I go, this is offensive. Why am I next to my outlet? This is not, what's happened to the world there? And it always is a little moment of existential crisis. What's happening here? But I think there's something beautiful about being a physical object that I know a lot of my friends are like, I didn't read your book, I didn't listen to it on the toilet. And it's like, that's okay. Some people are readers, some people aren't, some people like to read on their phones, so it's great that books can do it. I think that there is something unique about having a physical object. It's almost like a piece of merchandise in that it's got a sentimental attachment. And so there's something about publishing a book to me and being in a space like this and just seeing all the tones. It's like, yeah, we've got the internet on our phones, but look at this fucking wood. There's something nice about that. In the same way that, I don't know, going outside and touching grass is allegedly good for you, I think as well, having something to hold and be a part of your life and even to look at as a reference. I think that, I give a lot of my books away. When I buy those W.H. Smith airport books and I read them by a pool, I'll just chuck it with the nearest friend as soon as possible because I don't like just hoarding hundreds of books in my house. I always keep one that really hits with me and I put it there. Maybe I'll reread it, but sometimes I just like looking at it in the corner of the room because if I have a positive memory of it, it'll take me back to a time that I enjoyed or remind me of what I loved about the book. And so that's something I like about it.
And obviously, you have published books before. Very different tone, maybe. But how different was that experience? You obviously wrote it with someone. But like, is there anything that really stood out to you when sitting down to write this book where you were like?
Well, I want to say thank you to Phil and our ghostwriter. Phil was my ghostwriter. It's okay. It was very different and it was fun. I mean, like the first book I did, The Amazing Book Was Not on Fire, was like how do you even begin creating something like that? For us, I loved, like the Doctor Who annual. When you get those, it was like a collector's edition fan object where they just fill it with crosswords and photos and interviews with people, and it felt like such an exciting atlas of miscellaneous nonsense. And I was like, I want to do that, but for Dan and Phil from YouTube. And it was an amazing idea people saw this YouTube video where you posted where me and Phil had printed it out and we were talking about what's the layout of this book, and for some reason, even though we had computers, because we're dumb, we thought we're going to print every page at home. We didn't ask the publisher to send it to us. That HP inkjet was like, stop! I've been in labour for 3 weeks, and we just laid it in a train across our house, rearranging pages, and so it was like a very, very different creative experience to typing something about mental health during an apocalypse, but it was equally as beautiful, and I love that child as well.
This is my final question before we move on to the little audience questions that I have. So obviously the way that you published this book is very unique, as you had a whole entire career behind you. What's your biggest piece of advice for someone looking to pursue something new, whether that's a book, a social media career, or
I think that firstly, you can't tell yourself that something is too ambitious that it'll never happen to you, because that's how I thought about YouTube when I started, and for so many years, because I started watching YouTube when I was 15, which is how funny, this website is happening. And it was those years when I would be looking at all of these YouTubers going, God, that's amazing, I could never do that, no, that's not going to work out, but that's an audacious thought, let's not even do that, I go, that's ridiculous, which is me with a reply to that, and then it accidentally happened. Oh God, and here we are in a bookshop. So I think never tell yourself, I'm not that good at illustrating, I'll never be able to write that book, I'm going to theatre school, but I'll never be a real singer. You need to tell yourself, it happens to people all the time, and a lot of the time it's just having the nerve and the dedication to do it that is the driving force there. And I think authenticity is the most important thing. A lot of people go, I don't know how I should do this, what should I write about? And I think that you shouldn't be thinking, I don't want to do crime, because there's a whole crime room over there and people are into that on the train. You should think, I want to write a horny dragon book. That is me. And ultimately, you need to follow it up.
it's really lovely. Now I move on to the letters.
I did a good answer segue to the tone shift. Right.
Okay, so we have a little rifle through, then we put some fun ones and some serious ones. And so I will start off with, if you haven't made a topping joke, now is the time.
As I said, everything is inherently gay. Not that I wouldn't have come here if the bar was bottoms. But it's nice to be here, and I hope that Mr. Toppings, wherever he is, knows nothing about this event or what happened here tonight. I won't be asked back. Okay.
I've got, what are your favourite childhood books?
Oh, we're not going to talk about one series. No, it's okay. Okay, so don't lie. There was because people be like, woo, like, no, you didn't. There was a series of books called The Edge Chronicles, which was like a fantasy series, which was aimed at like 14-year-olds, and yet it was so fucked up. This shit was scary. I read it all the time, and it was a book series, and it had about 8 or 9 entries about kind of this really scary fantasy universe where a boy gets lost in the woods and there's just monsters trying to kill him all the time. And I think that trauma shaped me as a person and helped me get through it. When I recommend that to people, they're like, what about the wizard one? I'm like, shut up, motherfucker. No, read this good shit out there in the woods. It's your handwriting.
What did you buy in Primark earlier?
Okay, do you want to know why I chose this one? I did not go to fucking Primark. We've got the CIA out here in the streets like, I've been watching you through the bushes. Okay. What twink did you see walking around? That's Daniel Howell. You see any old white boy wearing black and it's like, dancing in Primark. I'm on Twitter, here we go, but that's fine. That's okay. I am every Caucasian male with brown hair on Wiki How. I accept that's why I'm here. That's fine.
Talking of hair, I had a lesbian haircut since you started. Do you think you'll ever be ready to let it go?
I think that this is a serious question. I had that brief moment during lockdown where that medium length hair happened for a bit. Well, we have 2 periods. We have square hair moment, and that's when I was in the straightening externally and internally era of my life. Don't recommend because of the burns externally and internally. I think that if I had that length hair, but it was wavy, I could have had like a strange Harry Styles Scarlet Envy Tarzan moment. It could have been a good look on me. But I bottled the hell out when I got to the mid-COVID awkward stage because I let Phil cut my hair off. He fucked that shit so bad. I was like, we're going back to aggressive masculine. It's okay, it's fine. And now it's my safe space, and people are telling me that's why I have half my audience, so I'm not going to shake it up. One hair off,
Very different change of tone. Advice for letting yourself grow when people can be really against change.
I mean,
I think that, you know, as well for me publicly, it's this idea that for so long we were in this strange era where everyone was like, do they like Dan and Phil? Because the girls are shipping straight boys, and obviously the vibe turned out so different. Everyone was gay, and if they weren't gay, they're like straight, but they're kind of queer, and it's a bit weird, and everyone's neurodivergent. It's like, well, good for us! We found ourselves. It was a strange journey, and I think for me at the time, it was me, you know, there was this constant pressure of me going, I want to just do what I want to do, I want to be authentic to myself, and yet there's this really loud comment section, and there's this, I think that we all experience it. Obviously I had a really extreme experience of feeling like I was beholden to an audience, but I think we all are in our life because we have the audience of our family, we have the audience of our colleagues, we have the audience of our own expectations for our lives, and I think that ultimately we're always trying to find this balance between going, I want to be accepted by the people around me, I want to succeed in the situation I am, and sometimes changing it up or feeling like you're going to do something that maybe people won't like is really, really scary. But I think the longer that you make those decisions, the more unsettled that you'll feel. And I think life is just a constant balancing act between having to put up with other people's bullshit and then occasionally doing stuff for yourself. And it is going to be uncomfortable either way you tip it, but you can't do what I did for 29 years of just going, I love boobs.
love boobs. Like, I suckle at one. 5-star on Yelp. Respectfully. Mr. Toppings is going to come down.
He doesn't need to know.
It doesn't need to know.
Which part of the book needs the most to you and why?
I think that, honestly, what I said the hardest part was for me to confront with was that how do you change your lifestyle? Because imagine being me with my abs locked down, eating pasta 4 times a week with in the basement, surrounded by cardboard boxes, going, you need to like exercise for your monkey brain part of you, just going that bullshit. I think the hardest part of the book to write was the first one, and by the first one I don't even mean advice for mindfulness and how to help yourself when you're feeling tough. It's going, I'm writing a book about mental health and just trying to pitch that middle ground of who is this book for and what do they know? Because I think so many of us are like genuinely, I'm looking at you, I'm going to give you a compliment. There are a lot of very intelligent people out here. I can see some people going, yes, and some going, I'm a bit. Choose to identify with whatever aesthetic you want. And some people are going, I'm a psychology major, some will go, I know literally nothing. It's how do I write a book that is for everyone and no one? To some people might be condescendingly obvious, and for some people it might be mind-blowing, or maybe I'm taking for granted how much I talk about mental health on the internet, because I think that we have this community that's quite open, and we discuss a lot of things that's really healthy, and it's a good community for mental health. I think it would be quite ignorant to imply that the world is on our level when it comes to talking about what is authentic and what's okay, and I have to constantly remind myself in this book that I've forgotten that who's our person living in Brenda.
Susan.
That they might be reading this and they might have never known what the word anxiety is. And so how do I go, okay, page 1, what is mental health? How do we go there? And I think that I spent 4 months rewriting that section, because I can go, right, practical tips for what to do when you're going into criminals and you're having one of those depression weeks. Here we go, I've got this one in the bag. Whereas for me going, right, how do I help Brenda? Okay, we need to come back to this. So it was kind of the first and the last thing that I wrote.
Why do you own a voice activated voice?
Got all these questions in. So me and Phil,
we needed a bin, and then we were like, well, where'd you go? I think we're on the John Lewis website, and then it was sorted price high to low, and then we saw this trash can that was like £62, like why? And they said it's a smart bin, and then I had a complete freak out, because that's camp. Like Alexa does not need to be literally rummaging through the shit, and yet here she is. And so it's an American brand, because obviously only Americans will come up with some shit like this. And so the funny thing is, it's like, it's any old bin where you can walk up to it and it functions. And yet if you go open can, it opens from across the room. And that was so camp. I was like, am I gonna waste £16.50 right now getting this trash can? Yes. And the best thing is, because it's American, you can't say bin. So if you're like, bin open please, or like, open bin, it doesn't do anything. You have to say can, and you have to say it in an offensive American accent. And it's honestly the fun we get out of trolling the shit out of people that come out. If you see my grandma Veronica over in my house just going like, open can, open can, and she's holding this thing, I'm gonna drop the thing on the floor. I'm watching her suffer and I'm loving every minute of it. And then across the room I go, can! Yes, fill me up, daddy, it's good. So that is one of those tips that adds joy to my everyday life. I love that smart bin more than I love myself.
Will we ever get bored? Will we ever get bored dystopian daily?
About the depressing web show, that didn't make me. It was super interesting because I posted a really long yap about why I was done with YouTube for like so many reasons, and then when I announced the tour that I was going on, I had a lot of the internationals being like, well, fuck me, I guess, because it's too expensive to tour South America, so everyone else will be enjoying all this stuff, and I'm sat at home, and I thought, the beautiful thing about the internet is that it's global and it's free. You do have to watch a lot of adverts on YouTube or listen to someone talk about NordVPN, but it is free and you can watch it wherever you want. And I think that as much as I tell myself there's a lot about YouTube that is really like distressing and unhealthy for me, that there is something inherently beautiful about it. And so the interesting thing about that is I filmed the entire thing in 3 days. Basically, Sophie, who I'm sure many of you may know, is Kate the PJ's girlfriend / producer.
I was like, I've got this idea that I had super last minute. I want to do an ironic, like late night show on my YouTube channel that is about how much I don't want to be doing stuff on a YouTube channel. And we rented a random sweaty hole in East London, got a bunch of vaporwave aesthetic shower curtains from eBay, and then spent 3 days of me yapping my tits off in the studio. And when I look back at it from that perspective, I don't even know how I did that. That's really weird, because I really pumped out that kind of stuff. It was an interesting experience because we had the video that I accidentally said the C word and it got demonetized, which was good, but then I had someone from YouTube tell me that I wasn't going to have any ads on my channel or be in the algorithm for a month because I was on the naughty list. And I was like, it was an accident, I didn't mean to. And I don't care if you accidentally forgot to censor something, you idiot twink. And I was like, shut up, I'm being censored. But it was beautiful. I think that the idea is, would I do it exactly the same way? Would I do it more often, longer? Would I break it up, do it series? I think the interesting question is, will Dan Howell ever post again? I don't know, it's interesting. Because what kind of YouTuber should I be? I think back to 2019 and go, should I just be one of those people that does a video essay once every 4 months? Mate, that is a good genre, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. The neurodivergent people are sat here. You give me that one video essay, I would watch it every day. It's fine. But then on Valuable Games, we're giving the people the highest form of art, which is British light entertainment. It's good. It's like my dad used to sit down and just watch panel shows on Channel 4 all day, and I'm like, that is the same shit, honestly. And I think that it's our culture to just look at British people yapping about absolutely nothing. So there's so much I can do. I think that, yeah, we'll see what's coming next. That's not
Okay, I can't get to all of the same stuff. Girl, why are you still pissing on Twitter?
Why am I still pissing on Twitter? Yes, I made my icon yellow in solidarity with all of you. And then because I had a verified account, Twitter said, you can't change it now. And this is locked in for a week. Because like, if we give you a tip whether you like it or not, then we have to make sure that you're not doing anything weird. Because I don't know if you know, there's a comedian called Jabuki, who's like a great Twitter user. He changed his name to @FBI when he was censored and said like, sorry for killing Martin Luther King, which was an iconic Twitter troll moment. And then Twitter were like, okay, anyone verified can just change their fucking name to anything. And so now they go, okay, Dan, you want to be Piss Yellow Dan? You're Piss Yellow Dan for a month. So I forgot, and fucking will you make that happen? Oh, you made a piss yourself with Dan.
This is fun.
It's a quack. And it goes on my sleek feminine wrists.
You should have made them for the entire room. That would I'm myself. Go to Greg's order.
Go to Greg's order. Yeah, I don't go to Greg's for the drinks. I am a slut for the vegan sausage rolls. There's like a little week they came out and I was talking about it. I thought, oh right, I'm going to see this thing. I was like, oh yeah, give me the sausage. And it's that thing where you're walking past it and you're having one of those mornings and you're like, I need it. I need to shove it in the hallway now. It's taking me where I need to go, like energetically and emotionally. Thank you, Greg.
And now I have just two actually really nice and serious ones. So guys, we'll be back to
second sausage.
Oh, actually, this one's funny. Advice for when you're on a total mentee bee and need to get your shit together.
When you're about to have a mentee bee.
That's actually written, I just didn't even abbreviate that. That's an actual thing.
I love that. Well, I think firstly, great use of mentee bee because it totally took all of the emotional pressure out of the act of having mentee bee. I am going to co-opt that now. You will not get credit for ghostwriting. I think that ultimately, sometimes mental breakdowns will happen, and they're natural, and it's your body's way of saying, I'm not going to let you pretend that this isn't happening anymore. And sometimes it's one of those cringe, amazing phrases. Sometimes breakdowns can be breakthroughs. You're like, oh, and then you go, sis, that is so true. Because it's only after I had repeated homosexual mental breakdowns that I have nothing to do but force myself to confront the reality of the situation. So sometimes you just gotta let it happen, and that can be awkward. And then on the other side, we'll go, hey, it's only up from here. And that's optimistic. I think that if you're really struggling in the moment, you go, I can't have the mental breakdown because the psychology A level is tomorrow and I pretend to have my shit together. That's when you do some of the practical tips, which you change your environment. You can have something sensory. I have a lot of friends that deal with panic attacks, and then they say that, for example, running their hands under running water takes them out of their head. It reminds them that they're a physical person with senses. You can go up to a candle and just go, oh, okay, and then suddenly you're going to take out of the thought hole. You can listen to your thoughts sometimes and go, right, yeah, I'm imagining death, everything's terrible, it's the worst case scenario. Hypothetical, will it go well? Don't think it could, but let's just manifest that reality, and you just need to try to emotionally slap yourself in the face. It'll be fun.
This is my final question. Good all my age, sorry. Do you ever overcome the fear that things will work out?
Yeah, well, yeah, shout out to me being half my age.
I think that, especially when you're younger, the issue is that you don't have a lot of power over your life, and the issue I dealt with was just thinking, I think this is who I am, I think this is what life is, I think that the environment I'm in now is going to be the case forever, and there's two sides to it. I think that a lot of us need to know we have the power to, stand up for ourselves, to create the life that we want to have. And also, there's just the inevitability of time. In the sense that you are half my age, you will also be fucking old at some point. And that is awful for your lower back, but it's great knowing that things will change. There will be so many changes in your life, and it is up to you, whether you have the power to do something right now, or you think, I don't even have the courage, or I can't even think about how I'm going to deal with this issue. It will just happen eventually. So if you can tell yourself, maybe I don't have the courage right now to believe that I can do something, just know that I think optimistically, inevitably something will happen. And that if you're ever at a point where you think, I don't like life now, I don't know if I can keep going with this, life will change, and that is a fact. And if I'm here now, twice your age, then I think that one day you will be too, and then you'll just be regretting the terrible posture that you had when you were doom scrolling on the internet all day. I'm in pain.
So thanks for landing it.
I now have to execute the tickets and wine writing at the bottom of my order. Unfortunately, that is the end of the evening tonight, and Dan has to rush off for a train, so unfortunately there won't be any dedications.
I did just sign all
Yes,
the
everything is
names
signed.
in
So,
the crime room. So,
yeah.
hell yeah.
If you had a nice glass of wine tonight, if you could just take it up to one of my colleagues to avoid spillages and slashing, that would be amazing. And anything that you pay to come tonight, you get a copy of the book. So please use it. But thank you again so much to Dan for doing this.
I love that. If anyone's brought anything you want to give, we're just going to start taking all the stuff out. I should take the selfie of you all. Yes, thank you. I'll hold this for the photo because it will make this look fancier than it was. Thank you. We're not going to talk about the weird questions. We're just going to pretend it's like a flowers and intellectual conversation moment. Okay. Right. Let me see who I'm going to fit in and who I'm going to. If someone across the street across the way. Okay, we can do. I'm doing it in two halves. I'll do you guys. Wonderful, and then over here, you guys. And then I think I'm discriminating. Wonderful. All right, I'll always have to
We're so proud of you, Dad!